the proving ground for the systems of control that govern your world right now. Now look around you. The pyres are gone, but the fear remains. It glows from a screen in your hand, an endless news cycle engineered to keep you in a state of low-grade anxiety. They don't burn scientific texts anymore. They just suppress the inconvenient data that threatens corporate profits. They don't call you a heretic. They label you uneducated, dangerous, or unstable for daring to dissent. The most successful lie ever told wasn't written in a book. It was the name they gave an entire 1,000 years of your life. They call it the Dark Ages, and 99% of people believe they know why. They think of ignorance, of filth, of a world waiting for a savior. But the truth is, the darkness wasn't an absence of light. It was an eclipse, deliberately engineered. The air in the scriptorium is thick with the sweet, acrid smoke of burning history. This isn't about salvation. You are being robbed with a quiet voice and a holy threat. They aren't taking your money with a sword. They are taking it with your own fear. It's a protection racket with God as the silent partner. What they don't want you to know is that their own internal records, the ones historians have found hidden away, read less like holy texts and more like corporate accounting ledgers, meticulous, terrifyingly detailed records of indulgence sales by parish, by region, by year. It's the same model that echoes today, a ghost in our own machine. His knowledge is stitched onto your map in a web of rum lines, a spider's geometry of true direction that ignores the childish drawings of kings and angels the official maps display. You have a banned text from a bookseller in Cordoba, a translation of a Roman geographer who spoke of a great southern continent, the Terra Australis Incognita, and your most precious, most dangerous source, a copy of a copy smuggled out of the Sultan's palace in Constantinople. A map drawn by a Turkish admiral who claimed his own sources were from the time of Alexander the Great. You follow it to a clearing where a crude wooden palisade encircles a small flickering world. A man in a stained monk's habit, his face hard but his eyes clear, stands guard. This is what they whisper about: the forbidden community, the plague dodgers. He doesn't ask your name. He just points to a large barrel. Strip everything. Submerge completely. The water is shockingly cold and stings your skin with the bite of strong vinegar. It's a baptism not of God, but of survival. The air itself is a co-conspirator, heavy with the sharp, clean scent of burnt sage and the acrid tang of molten metal that stings the back of your throat. This is the scent of power, the real power, the kind that can't be preached from a pulpit. The king, the man you've seen clad in divine right and righteous fury, looks small. He hunches over a table, his shoulders tight with a fear no crown can conceal. It's the medieval equivalent of a modern corporation funding illegal research to develop a patented drug, all while publicly lobbying against the very science they exploit. This knowledge was power, a currency more valuable than gold. It was kept from the common folk like you and sold to the highest bidder. The same paranoid lords sitting upstairs, drinking the abbot's wine, desperate for cures to peasant poisons and the strange new sicknesses that crept from the east. The monks weren't just praying for souls. They were harvesting bodies from the plague pits and potter's fields. The forbidden knowledge wasn't just herbs and stars. It was the simple, devastating truth of self-sufficiency. They burned books that offered other worlds and murdered those who spoke of them. They built a centralized, top-down system of absolute control, whispered it was God's will, and watched a continent kneel. Then, when the system was complete, a new elite washed the blood from their hands, rebranded the project as the Renaissance, and took all the credit. They buried the memory of the vibrant, knowledgeable cultures they had systematically erased. The entire 1,000-year period was the beta test. The page seems to whisper a forbidden question, a question that crawls from the 13th century and into your room right now. What if the chaos of the Dark Ages wasn't an accident? What if it was a controlled demolition? A manufactured crisis designed to wipe the slate clean and install a new, absolute form of power. This is the pattern interrupt, the moment the pieces snap into a terrifying new picture. A system so perfect, so brutal, so effective. You can't help but wonder if they ever truly turned it off. Your mother looks at the small chest in the corner, the one that holds every coin your family has ever saved. It holds the money for the winter seed. It holds the dowry for your sister. It holds everything. You watch her face, see the war between love and survival. The priest sees it too. He is an expert in this. He watches her like a wolf watches a lamb. Your fingernails scrape against the wood of the stool, a dry, scratching sound in the suffocating silence. On the great table before you, pinned to a seasoned plank of wood, is a vast sheet of vellum. It is a tapestry of heresies. For years, you have collected the whispers, the forbidden fragments. The portolan chart, bought for a bag of silver from a Genoese sailor whose eyes held the terror of a vast, empty ocean. He spoke of winds that blew the wrong way for months, and stars he didn't recognize. The only sound is the wet suck of your boots in the muck and the frantic drumming in your own chest. To leave is to abandon God's protection. To be caught is to be branded a coward, a heretic, and left for the crows. Every snapping twig is a village watchman. Every hoot of an owl is a demon's call. But the memory of your daughter's fever-bright eyes pushes you forward, into the tangled darkness of the woods. After an hour, a new smell cuts through the damp air, sharp, clean, and alien. The greatest lie the king ever told wasn't to his people, his queen, or his enemies. The greatest lie he tells every single night is to his God. From your hiding place, the world is a tapestry woven in reverse. The thick wool of the heiress scratches your cheek, smelling of dust and century-old spiders. Through a carefully parted thread, you see the king's private study, not as the world knows it, a place of solemn prayer and statecraft, but as it truly is, a chamber of heresy. But what they don't want you to know is that while they preached damnation, they secretly funded the research. You remember hearing whispers of the controversial Trotula manuscripts, heretical texts passed between abbeys, filled with detailed anatomical drawings so precise they were impossible to create without slicing into the very thing God had forbidden. These men weren't just healers, they were researchers, vivisectionists, breaking heaven's holiest laws to unlock the secrets of the human body. The scene before you isn't an act of madness, it's an industry. So, what was the ultimate truth? You feel it now, a cold stone settling in your gut. The Dark Ages was never an accident of history. It was a lie, a long, brutal, and stunningly successful campaign to manufacture a crisis and consolidate power. They came for you in 3 ways. They used the fear of damnation to control your soul. They use the fear of disease to control your body, and they use the fear of the other, the heretic, the pagan, the woman with too much knowledge to control your mind. It flowed in two clear streams, one directly into the coffers of the local lord who oversaw the purge, and the other, larger stream, into the accounts of the very monastery whose monks had declared the people heretics in the first place. This isn't a series of unrelated conspiracies. You stare at the translated text, your heart hammering against your ribs. The peasant's knowledge, the Lord's fear, the monastery's experiments, the king's secret council, the plague, the burned books, they were all connected. Every piece was a cog in a great and terrible machine, grinding the old world into dust. First, you create an invisible, terrifying problem. Then you sell the only cure. But the Holy Mother Church, in her infinite mercy, offers a path. The priest continues, his eyes finding your mother's. He pulls a small rolled parchment from his sleeve, sealed with a wax stamp. An indulgence, a plenary indulgence, he says, the words sounding alien and powerful in your small home. For a contribution, a gift to God's work on earth, we can commute the sentence. Not all of it, of course, he adds with a sad smile, but perhaps 1,000 years? 2,000? The single window is shuttered tight, thin slivers of moonlight striping the stone floor like prison bars. This is your life's work, and you know, with a certainty that chills the marrow in your bones, it will be your death. Outside, the city sleeps, under the church's comfortable blanket of lies. They sleep dreaming of a flat, manageable world with Jerusalem at its holy heart and monsters at its edges. A world where God's eye is always watching from directly above. Your world is not so simple. In the church, Father Michael's voice is thin as a winter reed, promising you that suffering on earth guarantees a reward in heaven. He tells you to pray, to confess, to accept God's great and terrible winnowing, to die with a clean soul. But you look at the empty pews where your neighbors used to sit, and you feel a coldness that has nothing to do with faith. It's the coldness of a trap. Tonight, you will not pray. Tonight, you commit heresy. You slip out of your hovel when the moon is a bruised sliver behind the clouds, and it is destined for the king's ear. On the table lies a body, not a pig or a sheep, a human body, pale and still in the lamplight, its chest cavity opened like a gruesome book. Brother Thomas is not praying, he is working. In his hand, a small curved blade glints as he carefully scrapes gristle from a rib. This is the secret they buried in God's own house. Many monasteries were not sanctuaries. They were clandestine laboratories. The Church, in its public sermons, condemned human dissection as a mortal sin, an act that would damn a soul for eternity. Then comes the sound that stops your breath completely. A low, metallic grating. Someone is sliding the bolt on the cellar door. They have found this place, and you realize in a moment of cold, perfect clarity that the thing they have come to destroy is not just a woman and a child. It is a memory, and they have brought fire to make sure it never surfaces again. But the final column is the one that makes you want to be sick. It shows the flow of money. It tracks the silver from heretical communities, weavers, free thinkers, communes that lived outside the feudal grip, communities that were systematically purged, their books burned, their people scattered or executed. The ledger shows where their confiscated wealth went, down to the last shilling. It didn't go into the king's general treasury. He describes the scorching flames, the wails of the unransomed dead, the centuries of torment that await a good man who was not quite perfect. He makes you see it. He makes you feel the heat on your skin. This is the most profitable invention of the Middle Ages, a masterpiece of psychological warfare. 99% of people believe purgatory is ancient scripture. They don't know it was a concept, barely a footnote in the Bible, that was meticulously crafted, expanded, and weaponized into the single greatest source of revenue the world had ever seen. It's the perfect business model. The line your hand just drew shouldn't exist. It's a coastline from a world God never made, or at least the one the priests in their stone pulpits insist he made. You lift the quill, its feather trembling, a tiny black drop of iron gall ink hanging from the tip like a suspended execution. You are in a room that is more of a secret than a space. It smells of old leather, melting beeswax, and the sharp, metallic tang of fear. The door is barred with a beam of solid oak. The greatest lie ever told about the Black Death is that God sent it to punish the wicked. The truth, the one they buried under 800 years of stone and scripture, is that God had nothing to do with who lived and who died. Men did. You feel it in the air of your village. It's a thickness, a sweet, cloying smell like turned earth and spoiled meat. The death cart is a constant sound, its single wooden wheel groaning in the mud-slicked lane. It is the only clock you have left. He knows the whispers about Agnes's other remedies, the ones sought by desperate girls who aren't married. He isn't just here to offer a blessing. He is an informant. And the secret he now carries is too valuable for the local bishop. This web of forbidden knowledge, this female power structure, doesn't just threaten a village priest's authority. In the right hands, it can end a noble bloodline. It can decide the fate of a kingdom. As the priest slips back into the night, you realize the report he writes will not be about heresy. It will be about treason. Your first thought is a sick animal, a trapped boar perhaps. But your skin crawls with a deeper, primal dread as you realize the truth. That is not an animal. That is the work of a man. You creep closer, the metallic taste of fear coating your tongue. You gently, so gently, nudge a barrel aside. Just an inch. The light widens. The smell intensifies. And you see him. It's Brother Thomas, the infirmer, the man revered throughout the countryside for his holy healing. He is hunched over a long stone table, his back to you. It's the same struggle we face now. In an age where information can be deleted with a keystroke and history can be rewritten overnight, the fight to remember is never over. Suddenly, Ilara's hand shoots out, clamping down on your wrist. Her grip is like iron. You both freeze. The rhythmic scraping of the mortar stops. In the sudden silence, you hear it. A sound from the world above, the heavy tread of a boot on the floorboards. Then another. They are slow, deliberate, searching. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone. The pattern is sickeningly clear. The church bans the remedy, and a month later, the sickness it treated blossoms in the dark, damp hovels of the poor. They didn't just let people die. They removed their ability to save themselves. They took away the knowledge that grew in the very soil beneath their feet, and in its place, offered only prayers and a collection plate. This is the secret. 99% of people will never understand about power. It isn't about controlling what people do. It's about controlling what they can do. His voice, when he speaks is not for your father, who can no longer hear. It is for your mother, whose face is a mask of grief. It is for you. His soul is preparing for its journey, the priest whispers, his voice a strange mix of silk and gravel. He doesn't speak of heaven. He doesn't mention God's loving embrace. He speaks of the waiting place, purgatory. He paints it with his words, a realm of fire that cleanses, of agony that purifies. And as you stand there, the heat of your burning world on your face, you can feel the impossible weight of what you've just saved. It's not a book of philosophy. It's a map that should not exist. You have to wonder what they will bury you under for finding it. They create a monster to justify a purge. The systematic destruction of the midwife wasn't a war on Satan. It was a hostile takeover. A campaign to seize control of medicine, knowledge, and the female body. It was about consolidating power. And as you help Agnes clean the mother and swaddle the newborn, you see it. A flicker of movement in the darkened doorway. The village priest, Father Thomas, his face a mask of pious concern that doesn't quite reach his eyes. He has been watching. He saw the ergot. But behind the last row, in the deepest part of the cellar, something is wrong. A sliver of amber light bleeds from a crack between the staves, a light that has no business being here. Then you hear it, a low, guttural moan, a sound of agony so profound it barely sounds human. It's followed by a noise that makes the hairs on your arms stand rigid, a wet, rhythmic scrape, 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 the sound of metal on bone. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of flesh. It was the moment the knowledge from this cellar, and 1,000 others like it, finally bubbled up through the cracks. It re-emerged in the coded language of alchemy, in the secret societies of artisans, in the forbidden margins of forgotten books. The powers that be never fully extinguished it. They only drove it deeper. This is the real human story. Not a simple, linear march of progress, but a constant, generational struggle to hold on to truth against those who would rewrite it for their own power. A farmer's protest in Northumbria, brutally suppressed, happens the very week the stars advised a show of strength to consolidate power. These weren't spontaneous acts of desperation. They were scheduled. They were manufactured events, planned with the cold precision of a celestial calendar. Your finger, trembling slightly, moves to another section. Your blood runs cold. Here, a list of herbal remedies banned by the church. Common folk knowledge, things a village wise woman would know. Simple poultices, tinctures for coughs, teas for lung fever. Next to that list is another column of dates. These are the dates of localized plague outbreaks. The single tallow candle on the stool sputters, casting your family's shadows onto the wattle and daub walls like giant weeping ghosts. You sit on a small stool, your fingernails digging into the rough, splintered wood. The cold from the packed earth floor seeps through the thin soles of your leather shoes. Then the priest arrives. He doesn't knock. Men like him never do. He glides into the room, a black-robed void in the dim light, bringing the chill of the outside air and the faint, holy scent of incense that cannot cover the smell of death. He kneels by your father's pallet. With a movement born of pure instinct, a final act of defiance, you drop to one knee as if in prayer, and your hand snakes out, snatching the roll from the ground. It's cool to the touch. You shove it deep inside your tunic, the strange weight of it a cold secret against your skin. They think the fire is enough, But for the secrets they couldn't just burn, the ones too deeply woven into the fabric of the world, they used a more insidious tool. For those, they used alteration. It's the perfect medieval business model, a direct parallel to any modern institution that exploits public belief for financial gain, selling abstract promises of salvation or security. The bones were a lie, but the fear they preyed on, fear of plague, of starvation, of eternal damnation, was agonizingly real. You are standing in the dark, holding the evidence of a conspiracy that stretches all the way to Rome. And then you hear it. The soft, heavy tread of the abbot's footsteps, approaching the storeroom door. They buried this secret under gold. But that's a smokescreen, a sophisticated piece of propaganda. The truth is far more threatening. Agnes and the thousands of women like her controlled the gates of life and death. And they possessed a second, even more dangerous secret, the knowledge of how to prevent life. Pennyroyal, Silphium, Queen Anne's lace. They gave women something the church could never allow: control over their own bodies. What the church couldn't control, it demonized. It's a tactic you see even today. When a powerful institution is threatened by a rival, they don't debate. They assassinate their character. It's a living thing, a damp presence that seeps through your wool habit and clings to your bones. The air is thick, a sweet, sick perfume of rotting apples, wet earth, and something else. Something you can't quite name. It's metallic, like old blood, and vaguely, terrifyingly human. Your candle flame sputters, casting your shadow, a monstrous, dancing giant, against the curved stone walls. Each soft thump of your wooden sandals on the packed earth feels like a drumbeat, counting down to a revelation you are not prepared for. The barrels are stacked high, silent sentinels in the gloom. So it was memorized, passed from a dying mouth to a listening ear, a ghost of a library surviving in the minds of the dispossessed. This is the survival underground, a network of whispers, secret meetings, and memorized truths that persisted for centuries. A flickering candle of human ingenuity in the suffocating dark. And here is the secret that turns all of history on its head. The Renaissance, that great and celebrated rebirth of knowledge, was not a rebirth at all. It was an uncovering. Your breath catches the dust of centuries as you lean closer. It's not a journal, it's a ledger of souls. At first, it looks like madness, a column of dates next to a list of peasant uprisings. But then you cross-reference the archive. The dates aren't random. You pull out the leather-bound charts of the king's own astrologer, and a chill, thin as a needle, traces its way up your spine. A food riot in Wessex coincides perfectly with the day the court astrologer warned the king that Saturn, the planet of control, was misaligned with the common folk. The price of a soul was 7 silver coins and a tired milk cow. This is the secret they never wanted you to know. Salvation was never free. It was simply the most expensive thing a poor man could ever buy. The air in the room is thick with the smell of sweat, damp straw, and the sweet, cloying scent of poultices that do not work. Your father's breath is a wet, rattling sound, a broken rhythm that measures the last moments of his life. This is the ultimate tool of control, a fire they still use today whenever a government rewrites a textbook, or an algorithm buries a truth so deep in the search results that it might as well not exist. But as the flames climb higher, a soldier stumbles, dropping a heavy wooden crate. It splinters on the cobblestones. Most of its contents spill into the fire, but one small, tightly bound roll of parchment, slick and heavy, skitters away from the heat, stopping near your feet. It isn't papyrus. It's something else, something older. An exposé was written, a book called On Relics by a monk named Guibert of Nogent, but it was systematically suppressed. He revealed the truth. There were enough pieces of the true cross circulating in Europe to build a warship. More than a dozen churches claimed to own the head of John the Baptist. It was never about faith. It was about economic control. Relics draw pilgrims. Pilgrims spend money. Money buys armies, builds cathedrals, and secures power. Ergot, a fungus that grows on rye. A deadly poison in the wrong dose. But in Agnes's hands, it is a miracle. She administers a minuscule amount. You watch, holding your breath as the blood flow slows, then stops. She has just performed a medical intervention that modern science wouldn't rediscover for another 500 years. This is her power. This is her crime. The Malleus Maleficarum, the witch hunter's handbook, saves its most vicious hatred for women like Agnes. It accuses them of sacrificing newborns, of stealing male virility, of communing with the devil. They told you the monastery was the spiritual heart of the world, a fortress of quiet contemplation against the chaos outside. 99% of people still believe that monks spent their nights lost in pious prayer or the deep, dreamless sleep of the innocent. The truth, buried under centuries of stone and scripture, is far more disturbing. You feel it now, as you descend the cellar steps. You are a novice, just 17 winters old, sent by the abbot for more wine for a visiting lord. The cold here is different. The words he speaks are not the harsh Latin of the Mass. They are older, softer, a pre-Christian verse about a skywolf that swallows the sun and a silver-wheeled chariot that charts a path through the star fields. It sounds like a child's fable, but it's not. It's astronomical data, a mnemonic device, a memorized star chart so accurate that it predicts the solstices to the day. It's a fragment of a world the church tried to erase, a truth so powerful they couldn't risk it being written down. For 200 years, it was nothing, a single singed piece of parchment tucked into the spine of a Bible and dismissed by 99% of the historians who ever laid eyes on it as the fevered ravings of a mad scribe. They saw lists, not logic. They saw chaos, not a code. But you are here, in the silence of the archive, with a single candle turning your shadow into a giant on the cold stone wall. And you can see what they refuse to. The vellum is brittle, a lacework of tiny cracks that spiderweb across the surface. He's looking at the loose floorboard in the corner. He's looking at what you've hidden underneath. And for the first time tonight, you see a flicker of something that is not contempt in his eyes. It's something that looks like fear. 97% of what we call medieval facts are not facts at all. They are the survivors of a brutal, systematic campaign of censorship by fire. They buried the story of Hypatia, the woman in Alexandria who taught philosophy and mathematics, until a mob of monks, fueled by sermons, flayed her alive with oyster shells. They didn't just disagree with her, they feared her. It looks horrifyingly similar to the knucklebone you saw in the procession. You realize, with a cold certainty that freezes the blood in your veins, that your town's salvation wasn't discovered. It was carved in a back room last Tuesday. This isn't an isolated sin. This is the secret engine of the church. What they don't want you to know is that the relic trade was a full-blown black market, an organized criminal enterprise run by the very men preaching against greed. The mother screams, a raw, ragged sound that scrapes against the stone walls. Agnes is there, her voice a low murmur, guiding, commanding. The birth is difficult, bloody, but successful. A new cry joins the exhausted quiet of the room. But the danger isn't over. The bleeding won't stop. This is the moment 99% of medieval women died. The moment doctors had no answer for. But Agnes does. This is the secret the historians refuse to discuss. The knowledge so powerful, it had to be rewritten as heresy. She pulls out a small, dark packet. Inside is a purplish-black powder. Secrets hidden in the cold earth, deep beneath the chapel floor, far from the reach of peasant hands. That is your only hope for survival. To fight their earth magic, you must unearth a secret of your own, one that even God might be afraid of. They don't understand that the real fight wasn't between faith and ignorance. It was between two competing kinds of knowledge, the approved, top-down knowledge of the church and the whispered, hands-on knowledge of the people. One was designed to control you, the other to keep you alive. In the deepest shadows of the cellar, a man is reciting a poem. He stares into the candle flame, but his eyes see a different time. That single, fragile page of vellum is still out there, a time bomb of ink and parchment. It doesn't just hint at corruption inside a monastery. It contains a name, and that name connects the abbot's web of lies to a secret that poisons the very heart of the medieval world. A truth so mind-blowing, it could unravel the power of kings and even the Pope himself. A gauntleted fist, bigger than your head, scrapes against the rough wood of the door. The sound is like fingernails on a tombstone. You hold your breath, praying to a God who seems to be watching from very, very far away. The wood splinters, groaning, then shatters inward. Light floods the darkness, silhouetting a giant, the Knight. He fills the entire doorway, a monster of polished iron and righteous fury. But he isn't looking at you. His helmet turns slowly, his gaze passing over you as if you are nothing more than furniture. They know that a population that has access to its own diverse, contradictory, and complicated past is a population that asks questions. And questions are the one thing a regime built on absolute certainty cannot abide. The torch is thrown. The flames catch with a hungry roar. You are forced to watch as centuries of thought curl into black ash. And the smell, the sweet, sick smell of burning papyrus, of leather bindings blistering and melting, is the smell of a lobotomy. It's the scent of your civilization's memory being scoured away, leaving behind only the approved story. It's a pile of bones, dozens of them. They are yellowed and brittle, but they are unmistakably common. The long, thin bones of a chicken's leg, the thick, curved rib of a pig. Your heart begins to hammer against your ribs. Then you see the tools, a delicate saw with a fine-toothed blade, a set of metal files, a small mallet, a bottle of dark liquid meant to age the color of bone. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue. You pick up a piece, a small, slender bone that has been carefully shaved and polished at one end. She ignores the crucifix on the wall. Her faith is in the leather pouch at her belt. From it, she takes a shard of willow bark, placing it in a stone mortar. You hear the dry, rhythmic scrape-thump of the pestle, an ASMR lullaby of ancient knowledge grinding the bark into a fine white powder. She mixes it with a little water, a bitter medicine you help the laboring mother drink, natural aspirin, a mercy the church-trained physicians, with their bleeding cups and astrological charts, would dismiss as peasant superstition. The baby is coming. The peasants have their knowledge, born of the dirt and the root. You cannot fight it with the same. You need a different kind of power, a knowledge more ancient, more absolute. Your fear, cold and sharp as a dagger's point, turns your thoughts away from the village and towards the hill overlooking it, to the stone walls of the abbey. The monks there, they don't just pray. You've heard the whispers. They guard things. Books bound in human skin. Words of power that can command obedience. The priest says a prayer over the dying, she murmurs, her eyes fixed on your work. We make the poultice that keeps them from dying in the first place. She shows you how the leaves of the wild comfrey can knit bone, how a tincture of willow bark can steal the fire from a fever. This isn't a prayer. This is a science. And that is what makes it heresy. That is what makes it punishable by death. 99% of people both then and now believe this was an age of blind superstition. He thought you were only a scribe. He didn't realize you were also a son. Before you climbed the bell tower, you tore a single page from your forbidden book, a page that didn't detail the finances or the fake relics. It detailed something else, something you overheard the abbot discussing with a visitor from Rome. You gave that page to your brother, a stonemason working on the new chapel, and told him to hide it, to build it into the very walls of God's house. He did not know what it meant, only that your life depended on it. It's the same trick they will use 1,000 years from now, with clean, sterile phrases like collateral damage to hide the gruesome reality of a family vaporized by a bomb they never saw coming. The language changes, but the sound of a mother screaming for her child is eternal. A shadow falls across the crack beneath your door. The laughter has stopped. The strolling footsteps have stopped. There is only the creak of leather and the jingle of steel right outside. There, a scroll describing surgical techniques, the cleaning of wounds, the setting of bones that could save millions. You make a small, involuntary sound, and a soldier shoves you back. His gauntlet is cold against your chest. They drag the pyres into the courtyard. What 99% of people will never understand is that this isn't about ignorance. It is the opposite. They are not burning these books because they don't know what's in them. They are burning them because they do. In the far corner, behind a stack of jewel-encrusted boxes meant to hold the tears of martyrs, you see it. A plain, unadorned wooden crate covered in a thick shroud of dust. It doesn't belong here. Curiosity, a dangerous impulse in a place like this, gets the better of you. Your fingernails scrape against the rough wood as you pry open the lid. The sound echoes in the tomb-like silence. The smell hits you first. Not incense, but the faint, foul odor of old marrow. You hold your candle closer. Inside, nestled in dirty straw, is not a holy treasure. The only light is a single tallow candle, its flame a nervous, dancing thing that makes the shadows on the wall writhe like demons. You can hear the low, rhythmic groan of the mother in the straw-stuffed bed, a sound as old as humanity. Outside, the men wait, useless and pacing. Here in this room, A woman is queen, and her name is Agnes. She is the midwife, and she is not praying. Her hands wrinkled and stained with a dozen different plants. Move with a calm efficiency that borders on holy. Watch her. It's cool and smooth against your sweat. A talisman against the woman who served you your wine tonight. Her eyes cast down, but her hands, what did her hands know? You try to remember if she smiled. The chanting from the village seems to pulse with the blood in your ears. Is it a prayer for rain? Or are they calling a name? Your name. This stone feels like what it is, a desperate hope, a child's charm against the dark. And in this moment, a terrible clarity descends. The single tallow candle spits and struggles, throwing your shadows, monstrous and dancing, against the stone walls. Before you, an old woman's hands, gnarled as ancient roots, guide your own. You are grinding yarrow in a stone mortar, and the rhythmic, gritty scrape and thump is the only sound in this hidden world. It's a sound that has echoed in cellars like this for generations, a secret heartbeat beneath the heel of the world above. Her name is Alara, and her voice is a dry whisper, a rustle of dead leaves. The truth is that it's written by the survivors, and the most effective medieval assassins weren't knights with daggers. They were the men who could erase a life from the record with a few strokes of a pen. It is the 13th century equivalent of the sudden heart attack of a journalist about to break a story, the mysterious car crash of a key witness. The message, sent without a single word, is brutally clear. Silence is survival. 2 men knew the truth. Now, only one remains. The abbot is safe. His conspiracy is secure, but he made one mistake, or an obstacle. Centuries from now, in a place called Visby, archaeologists will unearth a mass grave. They will find the skeletons of men and boys, some no older than your sister, thrown into a pit still wearing the cheap, dented armor their fathers hammered for them. Scholars will call it a brutal battle, but you know the truth. It wasn't a battle. It was an extermination. The chivalric code is the most successful marketing campaign in human history. A beautiful lie painted over organized crime. By order of the Synod, this library is a vessel of heresy. It is to be purified. Purified. You watch as the soldiers, clumsy and indifferent, begin their work. They are not scholars. They are hammers. They pull the scrolls from their alcoves, the sound of tearing vellum of physical pain in your chest. You see a lifetime of work, a millennium of genius, thrown into piles like so much firewood. There goes Archimedes' treatise on levers. There goes a detailed history of the pagan queens of the Britons. Later, the silence of the monastery is a cold blanket after the day's heat. Your task is menial, befitting your station. Clean the reliquary storeroom. It's a stone chamber, windowless and damp, where the holy treasures are kept before being displayed. The air smells of cold metal and beeswax. Candlelight makes the gold caskets shimmer, casting long, dancing shadows. You are supposed to feel humbled here, in the presence of so much holiness. But as you work, a different feeling creeps in. The most dangerous science in the medieval world isn't happening in a stone university, but here, in a bedroom thick with the metallic tang of blood and boiled herbs. The church calls it witchcraft, but what they don't want you to know is that they're lying. It's medicine, and they want its practitioners silenced forever. You are here in the birthing chamber. The air is a wet, wool blanket of sweat fear and wood smoke. It clings to your skin. The old woman who tends the gardens can tell a harmless mushroom from one that will make your guts liquefy. The stable boy knows which weeds to mash into a poultice that can stop a heart with the slowness of a sunset. This is the terrifying asymmetry of your world. You have an army. They have the earth itself. It's the same tactic used by rulers in any age. The quiet classification of information, not to protect the people, but to protect the powerful from the people they rule. You hold the bezoar in your palm. The great lie is that the knowledge was lost, that the books were burned, and 1,000 years of wisdom vanished into smoke. But knowledge isn't a book. It isn't a scroll. It is a living thing. And when you try to kill it with fire, it doesn't die. It just goes underground. You are here now, in the cold, damp dark where it survives. The air tastes of earth and cellar rot, thick with the scent of dried herbs hanging in dusty bouquets from the low ceiling. For 7 days, he walks like a ghost, his hands shaking so badly he can no longer hold a quill. He doesn't eat. He only prays. But you cannot pray away a man like the abbot. On the 8th day, a sudden, violent fever takes him. That's the official story. He is buried before sunset, his body wrapped hastily in a shroud, his sins and secrets buried with him. 99% of people believe history is written by the victors. You squeeze your eyes shut, trying to block out the wet, tearing sound of a thatch roof being pulled apart by a pike just 2 huts down. It's an intimate sound, like the world being unmade, one piece at a time. This is the secret they don't want you to know about chivalry. It was a set of rules for how wolves should treat other wolves. It never ever applied to the sheep. To the knight who now owns this land, owns your body, owns the very air you breathe. You are not human. You are a resource. You look up, your quill frozen mid-stroke. Heavy boots, caked in mud and authority, slam against the flagstones. They are soldiers, their faces impassive under their iron helmets, their breath misting in the frigid air. A man in a bishop's robe stands behind them, his face a mask of pious certainty. He doesn't look at you. He looks at the scrolls, the shelves, the towering architecture of human thought, as if it is a nest of serpents. He holds up a parchment, the seal of the patriarch gleaming in the candlelight. His voice is flat, devoid of heat. Housed in a case of polished gold and crystal, it looks impossibly small, the knuckle bone of Saint Genevieve, they say, a ward against fever and famine. The bishop, his face flush with piety and wine, holds it aloft. A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. You feel it too, a surge of genuine hope, a belief that God has finally looked down upon your muddy, forgotten corner of the world. You are a low-level acolyte, unimportant, but in this moment, you feel part of something sacred. But if the wound turns foul, if the fever comes for you in the night, his prayers will not save you then. He pauses, his eyes locking onto yours, sharing a truth far more dangerous than the hole in your head. There is other knowledge. Cures the church fears far more than my scalpel. Find the woman who lives by the old weir, the one who talks to the river, but never, ever tell a soul who sent you. It is this, the breathless, nightly terror of the people you own. They are your wealth, your power, your property, and you know, with a certainty that chills your marrow, that they hate you for it. 99% of people today think the church banned the old folk remedies to stamp out paganism. That is a lie told to children. The truth, the one that keeps you awake, is that it was a calculated act of disarmament. They were stripping the people of their most intimate and effective weapon, a sophisticated knowledge of pharmacology that no knight's armor could defend against. They call it enlightenment, but it feels like the deepest darkness you have ever known. It leaves you with the final, chilling question that echoes down through the centuries they stole from you. If our entire idea of progress is built on history's most successful propaganda campaign, what is holding our world up right now? A cautionary tale whispered by the novices. Brother John, they say, his mind troubled by demons, threw himself from the bell tower. A tragic suicide. Your body is found on the cold flagstones of the courtyard, a broken testament to despair. The official ledger notes your passing with sorrow. The secret ledger is locked away in the abbot's study, and your third book, your book of truth, has vanished. Thomas is next. He saw the look in the abbot's eyes. He knows. A word that sounds like a ride in the countryside, but is truly a campaign of pure terror, designed to break the soul of the land itself. It's not war, it's pest control, and you are the pest. You hear them now, heavy, armored steps, not rushing, but strolling through your village. There is laughter, deep, male laughter that holds no joy, only power. A pig squeals, a high, piercing shriek that is cut brutally short. Then a woman's voice, pleading, before it is muffled. It's a chart of the heavens, mapped by a Persian astronomer 500 years ago. Its calculations so precise, they predict an eclipse to the very hour, a decade from now. It is proof that the stars are not lamps hung by angels, but worlds of fire and rock, governed by mathematics. It is a secret that could get you burned. And it is one of 100,000 secrets in this room. The great oak door groans, a sound that does not belong in the sacred quiet. The hinges scream like a tortured man. 99% of people assume holy relics were, at the very least, believed to be real by those who sold them. This naive assumption hides one of the most cynical and profitable conspiracies of the medieval world. A secret they buried under mountains of gold. The sun beats down on your neck as the procession snakes through the town square. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, incense, and desperation. Your town has just spent its entire treasury, every last silver coin saved over a generation of back-breaking harvests, on a new relic. He lifts a perfect circle of your bone away, and the release of pressure in your head is so sudden, so profound, it feels like a second soul leaving your body. He works quickly, dressing the wound with a poultice of wine-soaked linen, cobwebs, and herbs whose names are older than the saints. He leans in close, his breath smelling of cloves and something like fear. "The pain will be great," he whispers, "but you will live. The priest will call it God's will. Let him." He packs his forbidden tools into a worn leather roll. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, is a stone. It's ugly, grayish-brown, and oddly light, a bezoar. Pulled from the stomach of a goat, sold to you by a trader with shifting eyes, who swore on his mother's grave it would draw any poison from your body. You paid him a fortune. A week later, you had him hanged for witchcraft. It's always safer that way. This is the secret they never carved into the statues of your ancestors. Not the glory of the hunt, not the piety of the feast. It's the chilling realization that your entire reality, your identity, is being systematically erased, not by invaders with swords, but by storytellers with ink. They are murdering your ancestors for a second time, burying their memory under a mountain of carefully crafted lies. And as the last scroll turns to a whisper of gray ash, you realize the true, terrifying nature of their project. They aren't just rewriting the past. They are poisoning the future. They are building their bright new world on a foundation of lies, a mass grave of forgotten truths. This is the secret they don't want you to know. The most dangerous rebellions in the medieval world didn't begin with swords, but with a quill. With the simple, terrifying act of writing things down as they actually happened. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the immense silence. Every shadow seems to hold the abbot's silhouette. Every gust of wind through the cloisters sounds like his footsteps. He chose you for your skill, for your loyalty. He never accounted for your conscience. A week later, you are no longer you. You are a story. The air is thick with the sweet, sickening smell of burning grain and the coppery tang of fresh blood. The metallic taste of fear coats your tongue, a sacrament you never asked for. You huddle with your sister, her trembling a vibration that runs from her bones into yours. This isn't a celebration. This is the ritual that comes after. 99% of people believe a knight's life was about honor and combat. But they don't know about this part. They don't know the French word for it, chevauché. By the guttering light of a tallow candle, you are not just a man. You are a memory keeper, a bridge of ink and animal skin, stretching back 1,000 years. The air smells of dust, aging papyrus, and the faint, sweet scent of beeswax from the seals on the scroll racks. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. But what you hold in your hands isn't the book they tell everyone you're copying. It's not the Gospel of John. He is about to drink, to take this pagan magic into the body anointed by God, when a floorboard creaks in the hall beyond the door. Every head snaps toward the sound. The astrologer freezes, his hand hovering over the stars. The alchemist melts back into the shadows. The king, vial in hand, looks not at the door, but directly at the heiress, directly at you. His eyes are not filled with the fear of discovery. They are cold, calculating, and filled with a terrible, dawning realization. He knows you're here. He's known all along. A successful surgeon is a direct threat to an institution that builds its power on the promise of miracles through prayer and payment. It's the same quiet war fought today in boardrooms and laboratories, where a brilliant discovery is sometimes buried by a system that profits from the established cure. Your survival proves a different power exists, a power of human hands and ancient, practical wisdom. And that makes you a dangerous miracle. The surgeon works faster now. A final, careful twist. A soft pop. From beyond the arrow-slit window, a sound drifts up from the village huddled below your keep. A low, rhythmic chanting. You tell yourself it's a prayer for a good harvest, a hymn to a plaster saint. But in the suffocating silence of your chamber, it sounds like the sharpening of a blade. Your fingers, accustomed to the weight of a sword hilt, tremble as they trace the cold metal of a small, lead-lined box on the table beside your bed. The lid scrapes open with a dry, metallic whisper that sets your teeth on edge. You know the sound the river makes just before it floods. You know how to make a poultice that can close a wound in a day. This is not ignorance. This is ancestral knowledge. It is survival. But it is not their knowledge. It cannot be owned, cannot be patented, cannot be sold back to you in a book. So it must be destroyed. You feel a coldness that has nothing to do with the draft seeping through the stone walls. The fingertip of St. James, bought from a grave robber in Spain. A splinter of the true cross, carved from the gallows behind the village. And the medical experiments, the miracle cures tested on the desperate pilgrims who come here for sanctuary. Their payments recorded, their deaths conveniently omitted. You and Thomas, the abbot's other chosen scribe, have documented it all in this second book. But you are now creating the third, the forbidden copy, the one for the outside world. The greatest lie ever told wasn't written in a holy book. It was hammered into steel and polished until it shined. The battle is over. You know this because the clash of swords and the screams of dying men have faded. But that was the noble sound, the sound of soldiers. A new sound is starting, and it's much, much worse. It's the sound of victory. From the dirt floor of your hut, you press your ear against the damp wood of the door. What they don't want you to know is that the Dark Ages weren't an accident. They were an assassination, a murder of the mind carried out on a continental scale. The cold from the stone floor seeps through the leather of your shoes, a familiar ache in your bones. Your world is this room, a vault of silence, where the only sounds are the whisper of a turning page and the dry scratch of your quill on vellum. They enforce one set of rules for the world, a world of prayer and obedience, and live by another entirely. A hidden, parallel stream of knowledge that has always run beneath the flagstones of the church. This hypocrisy is the engine of the throne, built on a foundation of lies, the most profitable of which is sold for the price of a candle and a prayer every Sunday. The king's hand trembles as he reaches for the vial. He uncorks it. The air fills with a scent like ozone and damp earth, the smell of a freshly struck grave. What they don't want you to know is that a staggering 50 to 70% of people who underwent this procedure, this trepanation, survived. The proof is etched in the bone itself. Smooth, rounded edges around the hole show clear signs of healing. It means the patient lived for years, even decades, after feeling the same scrape of metal, after biting down on the same leather strap. It means you have a better chance of walking away from this table than you do of surviving the next winter's fever. This is the knowledge that had to be suppressed. Court chroniclers would have you believe 1 in 3 noble deaths were from a sudden illness. But what they never wrote down, what was only ever whispered in stone corridors and scullery kitchens, was the faint, sweet smell of almonds on the dead man's breath, even when he'd eaten only salted beef. The wine is bitter in your mouth. You swirl the heavy goblet, watching the deep red catch the unsteady torchlight. But the sourness isn't in the drink. It's in your gut. A cold, coiling knot of dread that no amount of French vintage can warm. The church didn't save souls. It copyrighted salvation and monetized fear. The nobility didn't protect the realm. They bled it dry and called the bleeding order. The entire system you live under is a grand performance, and now the next troupe of actors has arrived to tear down the stage and build a new one in their own image, using the old wood for firewood. You look at your own hands, calloused from the plow, dirt under your fingernails. Are you ignorant? You know which moon means a hard frost is coming. The only sound is the dry, whispery scratch of your quill against the vellum, a secret sound, like a mouse gnawing at the foundations of a cathedral. It has to be perfect. Every line, every number. You are creating a weapon made not of steel, but of ink and truth. There are 3 sets of books now. The first is for God, filled with pious accounts of charity and prayer. Lies. The second is for the abbot, a secret ledger detailing the real business. A black market of holy relics so vast it would make a king blush. A floorboard creaks in the hallway, outside your locked room. Your heart seizes. You don't breathe. Every nerve screams. You stare at the map, this impossible, beautiful, fatal truth. They lied about the world to control the soul. If they were willing to reshape continents to maintain their power, what did they do to the image of a single man? What lies did they tell when they forged their most powerful symbol? The perfect holy night. The sound comes again, closer this time. A soft, deliberate footstep. Someone knows you're here. Someone knows what you found. They burned them not as victims of the plague, but as plague-spreading devil worshippers. They let their own people die by the million to protect a narrative. You have escaped God's plague, only to find yourself in the path of man's wrath. As you pull the strange, fragrant mask over your face, the metallic taste of fear mixes with the scent of time. You hear a horn blow in the far distance, a sound that doesn't belong to the forest. They know you are here, and they are coming. One man offers a map written in the heavens, the other, a miracle brewed in fire and forbidden knowledge. They are selling him the 2 things his own faith promises, but so rarely delivers: certainty and control. What they don't want you to know is that the architects of Christendom didn't fully believe in their own system. It's like a master shipwright who builds a magnificent vessel for his passengers, but secretly travels in a smaller, older boat he knows will not sink. His knowledge, however, comes not from the local church, but from the ghosts of pagan Rome and the forbidden genius of Arabic physicians, whispered from scrolls the church is actively trying to burn. He is a heretic of healing. The church has told you that only God can cure, that suffering is a test of faith. This man's steady hand is a direct challenge to that monopoly of power. New archaeological analysis of skulls just like yours, unearthed from forgotten medieval graveyards, reveals the secret they tried to bury. The bone tells the story the books were forced to omit. If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. They tell you that you were born stupid, but they are the ones who burned the libraries of Alexandria and Ireland. They tell you that you were without medicine, but they are the ones who outlawed the healing women and drowned the ancient knowledge of anatomy passed down from the Romans. A shocking archaeological discovery from just a few years ago revealed medieval skeletons with signs of successful, complex brain surgery, trepanation, a feat they said was impossible for your ignorant age. But that evidence doesn't fit the story, so it remains a footnote, a secret for the few. 3 men know the truth that underpins the wealth of this monastery, and it is a truth paid for in bone and blood. In less than a fortnight, 2 of them will be dead. The candle gutters. You are John, and your shadow is a tall, stooped monster dancing on the cold stone walls of the scriptorium. It is the hour of the wolf, when the world is asleep and only ghosts and sinners are awake. You are not sure which you are. It is proof that the church has lied, deliberately, for 1,000 years. It's a feeling a scientist might have, centuries from your time, holding a graph of rising sea levels, while the powerful claim the coasts are safe. The data doesn't lie. Your coastline doesn't lie. This knowledge feels like a physical weight, a stone in your gut. If their authority is built on a lie this colossal, a lie about the very shape of the ground beneath your feet, then their entire edifice is rotten from the foundation. What other convenient truths have they manufactured? But in these isolated, heretical communes, new archaeological evidence suggests survival rates were sometimes 50% higher. Think about that. They found a way, a simple, practical way to save millions, and the authorities couldn't allow it. It is the medieval version of a secret so dangerous, it must be destroyed. A world where you could survive a divine plague through practical action, through vinegar and herbs and distance, would shatter the very foundation of the church's power. If man can save himself, what does he need a priest for? They didn't just let these communities die, they actively hunted them. His work is punishable by a death so slow and inventive, it makes soldiers shudder. He places a small lead-stoppered vial on the table. Inside, a liquid shimmers with an internal oily light, the color of liquid moonlight. For your vitality, Majesty, the alchemist says, his voice like stones grinding together. The serpent's tear. It will grant you the vigor of a man half your age for the coming difficulties. The king stares at the vial. This is the choice, you realize. He is a craftsman, and you are his masterpiece. What 99% of people never learn is that this barbaric act is your only hope. The pressure behind your eyes, the one you call the skull demon, has been blinding you for months. The priest's prayers did nothing. The holy water only made your skin itch. But this man, the surgeon, he listened. He felt the soft spot on your head and nodded. He spoke of releasing the bad humors, of giving the demon a door to escape. 99% of people will never learn that archaeological digs at peasant sites like Wareham Percy have uncovered proof, complex tools, and seed caches that reveal a sophisticated understanding of agriculture and engineering. They buried this knowledge because an intelligent, self-sufficient people cannot be controlled. But this goes deeper than herbal medicine. There are whispers of a mysterious artifact found in a monastery cellar, an object that suggests these peasants didn't just know a better way to live, they knew a truth about the world that could bring the entire system of kings and popes crashing down. They are building their new world of progress on the rubble of yours, and to do that, they must first convince you that you live in rubble. It is the oldest trick of the tyrant. Create a crisis to sell a cure. It's the same psychological warfare you see today, when a political movement needs to paint the recent past as a catastrophic failure to justify its own radical agenda. Progress isn't always a gentle sunrise. Sometimes it's a hostile takeover, and you are the territory being conquered. The lie is intoxicating. For those who dare to whisper the truth, there is a special room in the monastery, a place where questions are answered not with scripture, but with iron and flame. A map so old it remembers a world before the last great freeze. And then there's the other heresy, the sailor's frantic sketches of a coastline far to the west, across the endless Atlantic, a place he swore he was blown to by a storm, a land with no churches, no kings, and people with skin the color of fired clay. You trace that too, a long, curving shore that proves the ocean sea is not an ending, but a passage. Your map is no longer a chart. It is a confession. You see children, their faces pale, but their chests rising and falling with steady breath. There is fear here, yes, but it is not the hollow, resigned terror of the village. It is the sharp, alert fear of the hunted. It's the difference between waiting for the executioner and fighting him off with a broken piece of wood. What the sealed church archives will one day reveal is the devastating truth of this choice. In devout, church-led towns, mortality rates soared to 70, 80, even 90%. This is the ultimate secret. The most powerful Christian rulers, the self-proclaimed swords of God, were deeply, desperately reliant on the very pagan sciences they outlawed. The hypocrisy is a chasm so deep it could swallow the entire cathedral. You know that church edicts ban astrology, yet the truth is hidden in plain sight for anyone with the courage to look. Royal account books, like those of England's King Edward III, contain the evidence, massive payments to court astrologers, listed right beside expenses for armor and wine. A second figure glides from the shadows. The alchemist. You hear the low, rhythmic scrape. Shh, shh. It's not the sound of a saw. It's the sound of a metal tool, meticulously carving a circle into your own skull. It is the most intimate sound you have ever heard, a dry, whispering vibration that travels from the bone directly into your soul. The man leaning over you doesn't grunt like a butcher. He breathes, slow and steady, his face a mask of concentration in the flickering lamplight. His hands are not clumsy, they are impossibly steady. He is not a monster. Her finger lowers, pointing to a bundle of herbs. This one, she whispers, stops the bleeding. The priest says it is devil's work. A bitter smile cracks her lips. He wants your silver for a prayer. The devil doesn't want you healed. The church wants you indebted. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. This isn't ignorance. This is a parallel society, a secret university of survival thriving in the shadows. So they created one. They created you. They walk through your village, men in clean clothes with soft hands, and they laugh. They laugh at the intricate carvings on your longhouse, calling them primitive pagan scrawls, ignoring the complex astronomical calendar they represent. They see your mother's knowledge of woodland fungi and call it witchcraft, a convenient excuse to seize her land. They tell you your entire existence has been a barbaric nightmare, a waiting room for their arrival. Your mother nods, tears streaming down her face, and goes to the chest. The metallic taste of rage fills your mouth. You want to scream. You want to tell her it's a lie. But you see the look in the priest's eyes. It is not a holy look. It is a warning. And you know, with a certainty that chills you more than the winter air, what happens to those who see through the lie. You dip your quill. You can hear the faint, wet scrape of the nib against the stretched animal skin, a sound that feels louder than a scream in the oppressive silence. You force your hand steady as you connect the Turkish admiral's coastline to the Roman southern continent. The shape that emerges makes the breath catch in your throat. It is the bottom of the world, a landmass of impossible size. But the ancient source material, the fragment the Admiral copied, described it with harbors and rivers. It described it without ice. They are led by the monk, Thomas, excommunicated for questioning scripture, and the midwife, Ilara, whose knowledge of herbs was already seen as witchcraft. They enforce a brutal, simple logic. The sickness spreads from person to person and on the things they touch. So they created a barrier. They cleanse. They isolate. They fight back. To the world you left behind, this is a profound blasphemy. It is the arrogance of man placing his own small actions above the grand, inscrutable will of the Almighty. You see families huddled around their own small fires, a strict distance between them. Mars is ascendant, Your Majesty, he murmurs, his voice a low hum. But it moves toward opposition. An invasion now would be a disaster. Wait until the Red Wanderer aligns with Jupiter. Then, victory is not just possible, but preordained. The king doesn't argue. He just nods, his knuckles white where he grips the table. What 99% of his subjects will never know is that their fate, the lives of their sons, the very future of the kingdom, isn't being decided by scripture or strategy, but by the slow dance of distant fire. The scream they taught you to imagine is a lie. The image of the blood-soaked butcher sawing at a shrieking man is a convenient fiction, a story crafted to hide a forbidden truth about survival. Your world shrinks to the taste of worn leather between your teeth. You bite down, the pressure a dull anchor in a storm of terror. Sweat, tasting of salt and fear, drips into your eyes, blurring the thatched ceiling above. You are on your back, on a wooden table scrubbed clean with vinegar and lye, your head held firm between two sandbags. The stench of wet wool and wood smoke is the only air you've ever known. The village elder, a woman whose face is a map of famines and winters, isn't telling you a fairy tale. Her voice is a dry rasp, the sound of leaves skittering over stone. She's teaching the forbidden science. She points a gnarled finger to the smoke hole in the thatch roof, tracing the paths of the stars. This is the star clock, a way of knowing the hour so precise it makes the church's new mechanical contraption seem like a child's toy. The tools are more sophisticated, algorithms instead of inquisitors, social media mobs instead of public stonings. But the objective is brutally identical: to keep you dependent, divided, and obedient. The forbidden knowledge of the Middle Ages isn't a history lesson. It is a mirror. It is a warning. The great lie was never about what happened back then, in the mud and the fear. It was always about controlling what you believe, what you question, and what you do, right now. They lied about your past to own your future. What else are they lying about now? You watch as a monk, his face a mask of pious indifference, feeds another scroll into the fire. The vellum curls, blackens, the ink of a dead language bubbling for a moment before turning to ash. You hear the final delicate crackle as 1,000 years of herbalist wisdom, knowledge your grandmother used to save a child from fever just last spring, vanishes into the rafters. This isn't a cleansing, it's an execution. What they don't want you to know is that the men of the Renaissance, the so-called enlightened, needed a monster to slay to make themselves look like heroes. It's the pharmaceutical company that helps fund the diagnosis of a new anxiety disorder before selling the only pill to treat it. It's the insurance industry that profits from the fear of catastrophes they can't prevent. The medieval church perfected the blueprint. Manufacture terror, then monetize the hope of relief. It kept the population poor, obedient, and too terrified of the next life to question their poverty in this one. And you, a child in a cold room, watching your father die, are just another transaction on the ledger. 99% of people believe the world is a disc, a divine stage for man's salvation. They believe this because the alternative is too terrifying to comprehend. If the world is a vast spinning sphere of untold size, with continents yet to be discovered, then their village, their kingdom, their entire existence is just a speck of dust in an incomprehensible void. If their world isn't the center of creation, then is their God truly paying attention? This is the secret they will kill to protect. Not a theological truth, but a political one. An absolute map grants absolute authority. As you emerge, shivering, a woman with knowing hands and hair the color of ash gives you a new set of rough-spun clothes. She hands you a cloth mask, a beak-like pouch stuffed with something that smells of thyme, mint, and wormwood. "Breathe only through this," she commands, "and do not touch anyone." This is the secret 99% of people in your world will never know. While the church preaches that the plague is a spiritual sickness cured by prayer, this small tablet contains the magic of the plague. Outcast Band treats it as a physical one. Before him stands a man in robes the color of a desert at dusk, an astrologer, the king, publicly condemned as a heretic just last month. You watched that proclamation, heard the crowd cheer as the king swore to purge the kingdom of such demonic influence. Now, that same heretic unrolls a star chart across the king's table. The dry rasp of the parchment sounds like the shedding of a serpent's skin, a delicate, whispering hiss that makes the hairs on your arms stand up. The astrologer's finger, stained with ink, traces a path between pinpricks of light. And as you watch Brother Thomas methodically map the landscape of human anatomy, a more chilling realization settles in. This forbidden work, all this blasphemy and butchery, it was all pointing to something, an even greater secret, a medical procedure that worked, but was so ruthlessly, so absolutely banned, you have to wonder what kind of cure could possibly be more terrifying than the disease. The church buried this secret for 800 years, a truth so dangerous they built cathedrals on top of it. They crafted the lie you were taught in school, the medieval peasant, a mud-covered simpleton, toiling in blissful ignorance until death. But what they don't want you to know is that this lie was a weapon forged to keep you feeling safe, superior, and most importantly, obedient. Now you are there. The fire is a fist of weak light in the center of the hovel, spitting embers that die in the damp earth.